I want to welcome everyone to the Happy House Hunters group. We go through a series every year on the 6 F's of real estate. It's how to find the deals, how to fund the deals, and then how to either fix them, because once you find them and fund them, oftentimes there's some things that need to be fixed. And so you have to have the contractors to do that. We were just chatting here before we came on that if you can do some of that work yourself to do the fix, you can save a ton of money. And that's where we were able to force some equity into a lot of properties by doing that work ourselves and not spending more dollars to have another company do it. And we were able to acquire a lot of properties that way with very little out of pocket. So once you find them, fund them, and fix them, then you have to decide, am I going to flip this one? Am I going to put it back on the market and resell it and take my profit out of it now? Or am I going to fill it? Am I going to be a buy and hold investor and fill it with a tenant and generate some passive income for a while? And then you can always sell it later if you want, or continue to hold it if you want. There's just all kinds of exit strategies out there that you can do. And then once you get to that point, you have to decide how many of these do I need to do to have my freedom number, to make my day job optional. And it's usually not as many as you think. You think, oh, I got to have 100 units. Well, that sounds good. But by the time you have 100 units, you're going to have a team, or you're going to have to pay a management company that has a team to help manage those, because that's a lot to handle 100 units. And you don't need 100 units to reach your freedom number. And so, and again, it depends on the value of the units, depends on what area you're in, depends on where you're investing, and how much cash flow you're getting out of each of those units if you're going to buy and hold, or what your profit margin is if you're actually going to flip those and resell them back out on the market. So there's all kinds of strategies, but today our topic is all about finding. And so, and it depends, on what area you're in. I don't know where everybody is. You can put in the chat maybe where you're located or where it is that you're investing. Folks oftentimes are investing in areas that they don't live. I invest some in the Florida market, and I don't live there. I live in Ohio. I'm coming to you from the Columbus, Ohio area. So it depends on where you're investing as to, what your options are and what your exit strategies might be on the real estate, and whether you want to buy and hold or flip or wholesale or just be a realtor, and you can make money just helping other folks finding houses to buy and hold or flip. So there's just a million and one ways that you can make money in the real estate industry. I have companies that do nothing but clean short-term rentals, and they're making a great living as a cleaning company. And then, of course, you've got all of your contractors, the plumbers, the electricians, the roofers. They're all making a living off of the real estate industry. So you can plug in just about anywhere that you want that suits your lifestyle. And so today we're going to be talking to Samuel Collins all about finding. And he is with a company called NetWorth Realty of Columbus, and he's located right in Columbus, Ohio. His resume says we build wealth and improve communities by providing residential real estate buyers with the inventory, expertise, and tools they need to restore and add value to properties with unrealized potential. With more than 30 combined years of residential real estate experience and a national network of experts in financing, construction, and sales at our disposal, NetWorth Realty simplifies the residential real estate restoration process, cutting out the middlemen and saving the buyers money. Beyond generating great results for our buyers, NetWorth Realty is dedicated to providing buyers with a great experience. Our fully licensed specialists are dedicated to providing the highest quality customer service along with unmatched guidance in residential real estate. So my first question to Sam, tell us about your background and how did you actually decide to get into real estate? What prompted you to move in this direction?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, by the way, Kathy. So I am originally from upstate New York before I moved to Columbus here. And, prior to my real estate career, I spent over 6 years in the home remodeling industry, even
Okay.
dating back to when I was working on houses, even in my college days. So Funny enough, I went to college at a rival school of Ohio State, which is obviously right down the road here in Columbus at Penn State. So not a very popular opinion here, but I spent most of my career remodeling houses. And, once I felt like I knew enough about fixing them up, I sort of had the itch to get into real estate, made the transition, got my license in Ohio. And after doing a lot of research, I decided that Columbus was quite the booming market for, what I'm looking to get into. So here I am, and it's just been wonderful.
Well, tell us a little bit about NetWorth Realty. What is that exactly? Are you just a traditional real estate office brokerage?
Yeah, so the best way I can describe it is sort of like wholesale with a twist, right? We're a licensed
Okay.
brokerage. I'm a licensed agent. And of course, I know wholesalers can get sort of a mixed reaction in the real estate industry, but we try to be a lot different from a lot of the other ones out there in a number of different ways. Obviously, like I said, I'm licensed, so we're doing everything the right way. But the real foundation of our business is the relationships that we create with people we do business with. I tell every investor that I meet with that my goal isn't just about the next transaction with them, but it's really to be able to build long-term relationships where we can be one of, if not their go-to source for investment properties. We really
Okay.
pride ourselves on being that one-stop shop. So we can give them a lot of tools that they need to be successful, that I'll sort of dive into in a little bit here. And we just really want to be a resource for them, regardless of whether it's their first flip, whether it's their 100th flip. And the last thing I'll sort of add is that, unlike a lot of other wholesalers that are purely just assigning contracts, everything that we get our hands on, we're either double closing or we're closing on beforehand before we put it out, because, we like to have that extra level of accountability that, hey, we're not just looking for someone to put a bid on this and buy it off us. And, if not, we'll just turn it back over to the seller. We buy it with the intention of finding an M buyer, knowing that it's going to be a good deal for them and they're going to be happy with it and come back to us after they're done, either flipping that or renting it out or whatever their goal is.
Wow. So you're definitely ahead of the curve on a lot of the wholesalers out there, because again, they're not sitting on being licensed and having a brokerage supporting them in the background. And so as these laws are changing and things are moving around, as we well know they are in Ohio. I
Yeah.
don't know if they are in other states, but they definitely are in Ohio. Uh, so you're actually in a very good position and have, I guess, a lot of credibility in the marketplace because of that. So, what types of actual resources do you provide with your partner investors? I mean, I'm assuming you have like a list of buyers that you keep in your back pocket. And
Mhm.
what kind of resources do you provide?
So I like to categorize those as our four pillars of what we do as a company: find, fund, fix, and flip. And I'd love to kind of dive deeper into each of those.
Okay, I love that because again, that's right along with the 6 F's of real estate that we're doing. I love that. I love that.
I remember when
Um,
we first met, it almost seemed like, some of the things that you took, it was like, wow, has she heard of us before?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So how do you typically, let's start with find. How do you typically find the properties?
Sure. So, sourcing properties is, of course, the bread and butter of what we do. All I do all day is I'm either meeting with investors like the ones that are on this podcast, or I'm going out there and I'm looking at properties myself. So even though I am a licensed agent, and I have access to the MLS, the vast majority of our deals are going to come from off-market sources. I'd probably say about 95% of them are going to be off-market. So of course, you've got your direct to seller channel, which is primarily where we go, where we probably send out about 35,000 mailers as a company nationwide to homeowners that could be potentially interested in selling their homes. So, I mean, I
How
spent,
wide is your market?
yeah. So even though we're in the Columbus market right here, we cover everything within a 45-minute driving distance of Columbus. I think you mentioned previously, we're in, I believe, 13 different states with 30 different
Okay.
offices. So if we've got any listeners that are in any other markets, feel free to check out our website, and I'm sure we can put you in contact with somebody that's in, one of those markets as well.
There you
Um,
go. Perfect.
so like I was saying, we really try to be assistants to, the folks that could be, maybe in possession of a distressed or, vacant home. And this is something I've really kind of felt passionate about since my days in the home remodeling industry, where, I was going out to homeowners' houses, giving them estimates. And a lot of times I would come back with these heartbreaking stories of people that, for whatever reason, just couldn't financially take care of their homes, whether it was because they're retired and on a fixed income, or whether they're just going through financial stress, loss of job, whatever it is. So, we like it to be a win-win for everybody involved and really kind of extend that helping hand to the people that need that sort of assistance. So we do have a variety of other, channels that we follow than just direct to sellers, such as, sheriff sales, relationships we have with probate or divorce attorneys, in addition to, foreclosures, pre-foreclosures, anywhere you could possibly imagine. We're overturning every rock we can find to be able to find these properties.
What does a day look like for you? I mean, what do you physically contact, or do you have a team that does this? How does that work?
Yeah.
Because
So
for folks that are maybe wanting to get into wholesaling, it's a lot of work. I mean, you've got to finding the properties is the key, and that is so hard to do. So how much of that do you personally roll up your sleeves and pick up the phone and start finding these deals?
yeah, quite a bit of it. I would probably say, um, half to maybe 2/3 of my time is just purely spent in the fields, whether it's knocking on people's doors or leaving notices and trying to find, the owners of unoccupied properties, or, even just sending out letters to people, just giving them notice, hey, we're here as a helping hand if you need it. So a lot of it, like you said, really is just getting my knuckles dirty and getting out there in the field and being able to find them that way. And a lot of it's just building relationships with different, contacts and things I have in the industry to be able to find these deals as well. So,
Okay, so now you found a deal, you've got your
mhm,
buyers list. So now you're matching up the deals with the potential buyers. And so
sure.
now the buyers, of course, need to fund this. So
Mhm.
how do you offer help in the funding piece, in that second F, the finding and now the funding?
Mm-hmm. So, we're always going to be open-minded to someone wants to purchase a property, but, especially for newer investors or someone that's only done a couple under their belt and is still trying to figure out, the best way to get the means to do this. We like to offer assistance through our sister company, which is actually a hard money lender called 212 Loans. So what's great about
Okay.
them is they underwrite all of our deals before they come out. So they're typically the easiest way to finance them. And there's a way for our investors to get pre-qualified and, ready to
I
go
love
and
it.
know where they stand before we even send them out.
So you show up with the deal kind of already funded.
Yeah,
Oh, I love that. I love that. Okay. And name the sister company again. What is the name?
it's called 212 Loans.
212 Loans. Okay, very
Mhm.
good. Two, is it just like the number two?
Yes, 212. So,
Just
and
the
that
number 212
correct. And for
loan.
anybody interested in anybody looking for additional funding, you can actually fill out a pre-qualification on loans212.com is where you can find that.
Okay, okay. All right, now let's move on to the third F. Okay, you found the deal, you've helped them fund the deal. Now this deal, chances are, because you're finding distressed properties, it's going to need fixed. You're going to have to do some rehab. What support can you give your buyers in the fixing portion?
A lot of that starts with the transparency on the front end. Like I mentioned earlier, our goal is always to have long-term relationships. So we want people to do well with the properties they get from us. So we're always determining what the rehab costs are when I'm sending out a packet. It actually has like itemized lists of everything that needs to get done so that an investor can
You guys
properly
are
budget
doing all the
that.
work. You're
Yeah,
finding it, you're funding it, you've already got what the rehab costs are going to be. So
exactly.
your buyer can at a glance know whether it's a good deal or not. And you're basically then just going to hand it to them.
Exactly. And on top of
Wow.
that, everybody's in a different stage of their investing journey. So some people already have their own crews. Some people might already be, contractors, whatever it is. But we have a pretty wide referral network of people that we've worked with in the past that, we've done vetting on their work and due diligence on them that we can actually refer out to people that are either looking for, their first cruise to start out with, or maybe they're looking to increase the scale of their business and take on some more projects at the same time. So, even though they're not quite in-house crews, it just helps to be
Mm-hmm.
able to use that network to be able to assist their buyers however they can.
Oh, I get it. I get it. And now, of course, then we move on to the part to flip it. If they say, okay, I just want a deal that I can, you know, buy low and sell high and keep my rehab costs, you know, under wraps here so that I can make a profit, then can you take the property back and move it for them at the other end once they get the rehab done?
Yeah, so it's not exactly taking the property back, I would say, but one thing we're going to offer complimentary to every single property that an investor buys from us is we have an in-house listing agent that will do a
Oh,
1% listing for them. So
1%.
1%. So we're saving on the margins on the back end as opposed to paying some higher typical commissions. And our in-house listing agent's wonderful. She's been doing this for over 20 years and she truly specializes that sort of thing. And
Okay.
you think about it, obviously we want to form relationships. We want to be able to do lots of business with our investors. So we have all the incentive in the world for them to, you know, make good money on that on the back end and to be ready for the next project. So we have more incentive than anybody else that would potentially be able to list their property.
I get that. I get that. We were getting some comments in the chat.
Sure.
Yeah, Wilton wants to know, you know, how can he go about buying his first $500,000 worth of properties? I'd say just, you know, get connected
Yeah.
to Samuel and see if he can help you out. Because again, it depends on, you know, where you're located or what market that you're in. But what types of properties are you actually looking for,
Sure.
Samuel?
So, you know, like I mentioned before, the geography that we cover is anything within a 45-minute driving distance of Columbus, anything within the belt, and even a little bit outside of that too, just because that's where, you know, most of our buyers are located, or at least some of the out-of-state buyers that we work with are looking to invest in this particular market since there is so much growth out here in Columbus. I would say we work mostly with single-family homes, and we do come across some multifamily homes as well. We love those, as this, you know, most investors that are looking to buy and hold, but they just tend to be a little bit fewer and far between than the single family homes.
Right,
We'll go
right.
up to 4 family and quadplexes. Occasionally, we'll do some small commercial or, you know, even lots and land, but I would say for the most part, it's going to be single family. And as far as the condition of those goes, it could be anything from something that's livable at its current state that, you know, might just need a little bit of polishing up that would be pretty easy for someone just to do the work themselves, all the way something down to a full gut or even a fire burn that could, you know, require a much larger rehab. But obviously, as we know, those tend to get some of the biggest spreads and some of the best profit margins for those that are willing to take on that big of a project.
Well, and for those that have the skill set to take on that big of a project, and it is a skill set because you don't know what you don't know when you start. When I first got started, you know, I didn't know really all the nuts and bolts about rehabbing a house, but after I did two or three, and you know, kind of got my feet wet, so to speak, and figured out some things, it very little scares us. We even take on lead houses that need lead abatement because Mark just went back to school in his 70s and got his lead abatement certificate. So now he's a lead abatement contractor, and so those don't scare us anymore. They did it first because we're thinking, oh, what does that mean? What do we got to do? But now they don't.
Right.
So again, it's just you just have to start. I recommend for those that are brand new, you start with something that maybe doesn't need as much rehab, and
Mhm.
you know, and get through a couple of smaller projects before you tackle one of the big ones. But that's how we all got started. We all just started small with something that we felt we could handle because you don't know what you don't know, and you have to just kind of start first and get clarity on that second. So I love that you can do single family duplexes, anything up to a fourplex. I love all that. How do you actually determine a property's ARV, a property's after repair value? How do you like if I'm a brand new investor and you bring me a house and say, you know, here's the house, here's the deal, here's the amount of rehab it's going to take. How do you determine that amount of rehab so that you can calculate, and here's what the house will be worth after you guys do this amount of rehab? I think we all watch HDTV too much, and they want to make it on because it's TV, and they want to have the scare factor, to keep all of us leaning in, where they pull a board off and they go, "Oh no," and then it goes to commercial. And we're all sitting there going, "What's the oh no? What's so bad about this house?" So I guess maybe as a new investor, that's what would concern me, is that how do you know that this is what it's going to take to rehab this house?
Right. Real quick sidebar. I'm giggling over here because of what I know about Mark being a former teacher going back to school at the age of 70. Why am I not surprised by that? But going back to your question, so we, as a licensed agent, of course, having access to the MLS definitely helps to be able to pull up comps that are local to the subject property to be able to determine that ARV. Obviously, not all the investors I work with, in fact, most of which don't have their license and don't have access to that kind of data. So that's part of the packet that we send out. We'll actually have some of the local comps in the area and the differences between the subject and the comps, so that you can actually see where we're getting that ARV number from, and that we're not just
Okay.
pulling it out of thin air, of course. And the key to comping, of course, is always just to keep it apples to apples. We try to stay within 90 days, something that's in the same pocket, in the same neighborhood, not crossing any kind of major roadways or subdivisions. And we're going to take into a factor a lot of different accounts, like, school districts, of course, how many bedrooms and bathrooms you have, square footage, total finished living space, style of the home, garage spaces, days on market, acreage, year of build, presence of the basement, and of course, the potential of what that property could become by doing different value adds, like, hey, we think this would be a great place for a bathroom, or hey, if this were me, I would add a third bedroom down here, just to kind of give, our investors the ammunition they need to be able to get that, that recuperation of their funds. So not only do we include the ARV, comps on every single packet that we send out, but, one of the things I always like to go through with an investor the first time I'm meeting them is some historical data of how, on the money we've been, no pun intended, with those sort of numbers. And on average, we're typically the property typically sells for 105% of what we determine the ARV is ahead of time. So
Okay.
worst case scenario, we're usually, maybe 95%. And there's been some awesome instances where they've made about 120%, which for, a larger property, it was a really nice payday for that particular investor.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, again, rehab costs vary from city to city. And
Sure.
so my guess is that you've just fine-tuned your rehab costs across the board for the Central Ohio area, since that's where your major market is.
Mhm.
And so you probably, the law of large numbers, you've done enough of these that you've probably zeroed in to where your rehab costs are pretty accurate.
Definitely. Just like I mentioned before, we're always including line by line items, exactly what needs to be done. We always include some miscellaneous, because anybody that's ever done a flip or rehab knows that there can be surprises sometimes. And, we're determining that based off of local contractor estimates we've gotten in the past, off of constantly monitoring the cost of materials from places like Home Depot or Lowe's, constantly monitoring the cost of, labor for any particular given market. So we try to really be as accurate as possible. And, sometimes we'll even actually take live trips to Home Depot or Lowe's just to make sure we're still on the money.
No, I get that. I get that.
Yeah.
Some of the comments are how does somebody get either into the Texas market or the Florida market? Now, I got into the Florida market. I just went to Florida and picked an area, because I'm a buy and hold investor, and so I picked an area that had a lot of the locals, where they are, wanting to rent long term because they work in the area, they live there, their families are there. And I just bought some units in those areas, and it's turned out really well for me. So I just went to Florida and just bought some.
Yeah.
uh, and so again, it depends on what your goals are. Mine was a little kind of double. I wanted not only something that I could long term rent as my exit strategy, but I
Mhm.
wanted something close enough to one of the coastlines that I might try to either short term or mid-term rent. But then if for whatever reason it didn't go so well, or I didn't get the occupancy that I wanted, I could always fall back on a long-term rent and the numbers still worked. And so that's my advice if you're investing in Florida. If you invest toward the middle of the state, Oftentimes that's where you get just a lot of the locals. They just live there. They don't like to live along the coast because it's too touristy. It gets too crazy busy during, snowbird season. But because I wanted to try to short term off hand, off season, when I didn't want to use the property, I wanted to be able to short term rent it. I chose a little closer to the Gulf shores, and not Gulf shores as in Gulf shores, but the Gulf shoreline. So I actually chose Bradenton, which is right below Tampa. It's a very, I'll say, blue collar once you get a little inland, because of all the touristy areas there. It requires a lot of folks, that they need workers. And so I knew that I would have a great exit strategy if my short term didn't work out. But the short term's working out great, so I'm happy. So my return is actually more than what I had calculated on that, excuse me, on that long term rental. Um, the other question is, any advice with investing in Michigan within the Metro Detroit area? Detroit's on the upswing. There for a while when everything kind of, the bottom fell out of all of the industry up there, things got pretty barren for a while, but it's on the upswing. So yeah, Detroit would not be a bad area to invest in. There's some are better than others. I think you just have to drive around and just find out what areas you felt comfortable in Detroit. We often talked about, we could invest in Detroit because the properties were going at such a low price. But there was so much looting going on in around that you would almost have to have, a management company on the ground there that could keep an eye on your properties. So we chose not to. We didn't feel we were big enough to put that kind of an investment into Detroit. So we chose not to invest in Detroit. We also chose not to invest in Cleveland, which is here in Ohio, because Cleveland, at the stroke of a pen, the zoning they can make all kind of changes. And one of the things that Cleveland did is they said every time a property sells, it has to go through a lead testing. And so we chose not to invest a lot in the Cleveland area because, again, Mark's even a contractor, a lead abatement contractor now. And Cleveland is a wonderful area to invest in if you have a lead abatement contractor in your back pocket. But Mark, at his age, said he didn't want to just spend his days rehabbing lead abatement. So we've chosen, and again, it's been strategic on our part. We've chosen not to go that direction. So we've chosen in Ohio to go further south. And so right below Columbus, Ohio is the entire Hocking Hills area. And so we chose to actually go that direction. And that's been great investments for us, is to go a little bit into Southern Ohio, a lot of parks, a lot of national parks, and a lot of short-term rentals going on down there, and a great exit strategy because, again, all those places have to have workers. And so all those workers have to have a place to live. And so that's been great exit strategies for us as well, to rent those units. So Southern Ohio is incredibly good to us. Property taxes are a lot lower there. So we're doing really well in our investments at this point. How do you structure, Samuel, how do you structure fees on your deals? How does the pricing work on how you get paid?
Sure. And one quick thing before I forget here, I'm actually putting my email in the chat here for anybody that's interested in
Yes,
any of the other
thank you.
markets we have a presence in. If you shoot me an email and let me know, hey, I'm looking to get involved in Columbus or really any of the other markets we have, I'd be happy to make a personal introduction with someone that does the same thing I do in another market so they can, get a hold of what you're looking for and be able to best assist you with some of the ways I talked about here.
No, I love that. Yes, yes. So for those of you that are listening, and I'll put it in the replay description when I do the replay of this video, I'll include his email there as well, so that if you don't make a note of it here or screen print it or whatever, you can click through on the replay later and pick it up there as well. But yes, definitely get a hold of Samuel and he can point you in the right direction. So again, my question, Samuel, was, well, how does the pricing work? I mean, how do you get paid?
Totally. So I know with a lot of, the term assignment fee, a lot of gets thrown around when it comes to wholesaling. And as a reminder, of course, we don't do any sort of assignments or anything. So the fee, the profit margin of our company is already built into the all-in price. So it's not something that typically someone would see. And of course, full transparency, that's how I get compensated is, the
Mhm.
difference between where we're buying the property at and, where we're selling it. But, what I can say is that those fees tend to be very, very small margin compared to some of the other, wholesalers I've seen out there. Our whole business model is based on repeat business and volume since we want to be able to maintain good relationships and for people to continue investing with us. So to use baseball as an analogy, we're not looking to hit home runs all the time. We're okay with hitting consistent singles, if that makes sense.
It
So,
does, yeah.
and one thing I did want to add on our pricing is, anybody that's ever, put a offer on a property is probably familiar with the term highest and best, right? It's a
Mhm,
bidding
mhm.
war. You're hoping that, you have the most competitive offer and it's the highest and that you hopefully end up with that property. Well, one of the nicest parts about working with us is that all of our prices are fixed. So that means there is no highest and best, and there is no bidding wars on any of our properties. The price you see when we put the property out there is the price you get. Now, what that means is that it pretty much comes down to speed and first come, first serve. So
Yeah,
responsiveness, being able to get out there, look at it, and having the ability to be able to run your numbers and make a sound decision is definitely a good skill set to have. But it's nice to know that, we're not going to send you over a deal and all of a sudden it's being bid to the point where it's, you're only $5,000 less than the ARV is.
yeah. Oh, no, no, I can appreciate that. And for those of you newbies that are listening, I probably look at real estate, my guess, just off the top of my head, I'd have to actually pay attention more to give you a definite number. But off the top of my head, I bet I look at real estate 2 to 3 hours every single day. And so when a good deal falls into my lap, I know it's a good deal because I've looked at property for 2 or 3 hours every single day. Anytime I get some downtime, I'm on the MLS looking to see just what's out there, what the market is, what the houses look like. And so when one crosses my desk that is a good deal, I recognize it as a good deal. And in our Happy House Hunters group, I will often collect 2 or 3 or 4 what I think are really good deals, and I hand them out to my top students and say, "Oh, here, if you're still looking, take a look at this one." Now, again, I'm not telling them to go buy it. I'm just saying, put this one on your list to go look at. Do your due diligence, but this is one that I think has some potential because I've been doing this a lot longer than they have, and so they do appreciate that I, will kind of, earmark some deals for them that I think is pretty good. Again, Sean is saying they don't have access to MLS. That's what Samuel does. That's the whole point. Samuel has access to the MLS. That's why you need to build those relationships with folks like Samuel or even his team that's in another state, if you're in another state, wherever you are, and build those relationships because again, they're looking for those deals every day. Our topic for today is finding the deal, and that's where Samuel comes in, is he is finding these deals that you may not find, and he already knows that they're a good deal. So that's why you have to have someone like Samuel on your team, and you can build your team with folks like that. Now, let's say that I'm an investor and you've got this list of deals and you've got this list of buyers. How do I get in touch with you to make an offer, and how do I see these deals that you're offering? How do I make an offer on one?
Sure. So, like I mentioned in the very beginning, our whole goal is always to be able to build, strong relationships with our investors. So prior to, sending any sort of deals over, I always want to meet in person with someone or, over Zoom if they're out of state, of course. And the goal of, initially meeting someone is just really to start the relationship on the right foot. I want to get to know you. I want to know, what does investing mean to you? What decided to make you go down this path? What are your goals? What are you looking for? How can I provide any sort of necessary resources to meet those goals and to make sure you're successful? Because, at the end of the day, a deal for one person isn't a deal for everybody. And everybody has different types of properties they're looking for. So it's really helpful to get the best idea of what someone's buy box is before I start just, flooding your
Right.
inbox with things that you might not potentially be interested in. So once I've met with someone and they know me and, I've added them to my book of business, the key to getting a net worth deal, like I mentioned previously, is definitely speed and responsiveness. So since there isn't any bidding wars, It's essentially, hey, I sent it over to you. I gave you some details on it in the morning, please look at it at your earliest convenience and let's go out there, let's walk it. And if it's something you love, let's go try to make an offer on that right now, because there are, times where people do miss out, unfortunately.
Mhm. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I've missed a few myself. Yes, I get that. Janice has a question. Janice, can you go ahead and ask your question?
Yes, certainly. So, Janice Carter, I'm actually a real estate broker here in Atlanta, Georgia. Not an investor as yet, but I'm working a lot of investors, right? So what I'm doing primarily is tenant placement. And this year I've launched my property management company. So what I would love to learn how to do is to analyze deals. So instead of waiting for my investors to say, okay, we have this property. Usually most of my investors, I mean, they buy and hold, right?
Hmm.
So again, I would love to learn how to analyze deals. Is that something that you offer, either of you, Kathy or Sam? Where you can,
Sam, I'll let you take that first.
Sure. So everybody's analysis is always going to be a little bit different depending on, of course, what you're looking for, what kind of numbers you're working with. I think it helps to be able to know going into it, what are the costs I'm going to be looking at with the lender, what kind of costs am I going to be looking at to take out a loan? What could the holding costs potentially be? What sort of rehab costs am I looking at with my particular contractor that I'm comfortable with, that's my boots on the ground person? And, we try to take all that homework ahead of time and be able to provide that to you. Everything we send out always has, a spreadsheet breakdown of not only, what the rehab would be, but hey, if you used one of our loans, here's where you'd be at all in, here's where the rehab costs would be, here's, the exact amount that you would actually profit if all these numbers, end up standing in the long run. So, I know a lot of different investors use a lot of different analysis methods, but we try to make it simple for everybody and try to give you all the information you need to be able to plug and play into whatever sort of, method of analysis you like.
Now, for my answer for Janice is there's nothing like experience. And Mark and I, we just started investing and rehabbing, and we just kind of know. I can look at a house now, and if it needs a roof, I can ballpark that I got a dog ear X amount of dollars for that size of roof, or it's going to need a furnace, so I got to kind of make a mark that it's going to need. I always round everything off high so that I don't get any surprises at the other end. But there's all kinds of templates out there on the internet, Janice, that you can go to. But the problem is that every area, and where are you coming to us from? What's your where do you actually live, Janice?
I'm in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay, you're in Atlanta. And what area are you wanting to invest in?
Well, this will be for my investors, that I work with.
Uh-huh.
So usually, are you familiar with Atlanta? So like in
Yes.
Cobb, Cherokee County, North
Hmm.
Fulton, those are the areas that we primarily look at.
Yeah, if I were you, I would probably get online and find a template. And then again, like Samuel said, they spend a lot of time going in and out of Home Depot or wherever. And then you're just going to have to plug in some ranges of cost. Like if I need a furnace, it's going to, in my area, it's going to be in this range. If I need a roof, it's going to be in this range of, per square foot or whatever. And then that way, once you get your base numbers onto your template, then depending on how many square feet the house is, it's just a math problem after that. And that'll give you a very good idea of what the rehab costs are going to be.
Now, you mentioned that you use at the MLS a lot, right? Which when I look at the MLS, there's not as many deals on the MLS. What are you
Right.
looking at primarily to find the deals on the MLS? Are you looking
When
at
I, well,
buyers? Are you looking at
here's my take on it, and everybody's a little different. I use the MLS to see what the market is. So that lets me know if somebody brings me a house that's off market, say, let's say Samuel, I'm on his, let's just make an example. Let's say I was on his buyer's list. He now has this great deal. He contacts me as one of his buyers and he said, here's what I found. Are you interested? I would know in the area that house is, because I look at so many houses on the MLS. I would know, oh my gosh, there is tons of room in that deal for me to rehab that house. And especially if he's providing me also with the rehab estimate, I'm going to know almost immediately whether that's a good deal or not, because I look at so many on the MLS that I think, oh, you can't touch anything for that. cost. So yeah, I'm going to grab that one. You just know when it's a good deal if you're looking at a lot of properties. However, if I'm finding my own and I'm not leaning on someone like Samuel to find it for me, if I'm out there finding my own deals, then at that point, and the reason that I'm going to go down this path a little bit with you is this is how Mark and I have actually made it in this business, is that we find something on the MLS that maybe is in foreclosure or on auction or whatever, and it doesn't move. And so then the bank gets the property back. So now the bank is sitting on this property and they really don't want the property. They need to get it off their books. And so they put it back out there. And if it's an FHA loan, they put it back out there for owner occupants to make an offer. And it has to go, and correct me if I'm wrong, Samuel, since you're a licensed real estate agent, is it 15 days, 14 days, something? It has to be on the market if it's a foreclosed FHA loan. And so only owner occupants can make an offer on it. So we watch it for that 14 days. And if it's still on the market, because keep in mind, if that property was FHA and it went into foreclosure, chances are the owners that basically left it for foreclosure, they probably didn't maintain it because they didn't have the money to even make their payment. So they're probably not spending money on maintaining the property. And as a matter of fact, a lot of those have even been stripped out. When the owner left, they took the cabinets and the doors and everything with them when they left to try to recoup some of their loss. And so, they sell that stuff to try to recoup some of their loss. So at the end of the day, the bank is sitting on a property that probably won't even qualify for an FHA loan again. And so potential owners come and look at it. They can't get it approved as an FHA because it has to be owner occupied. They don't have the money to maybe rehab it. So now after 14 days, it's open to investors. And here's where it gets interesting. So now the investors look at it. And the investors have their big question to themselves is this a good deal, or is there a better deal out there? And sometimes they'll say, there's better deals than this one. This one's going to need a little too much work. And when they look at those rehab costs compared to that ARV, they go, we're going to pass because we're not going to make the profit we want to make. Well, because Mark and I are buy and hold investors, and we're doing most of the work ourselves. So we're only having to pay for materials, not the labor. And we know that we can actually hold it for the next 20 years as a rental. That becomes a good deal for us. It may not be a good deal for the person that wants to flip, or a good deal for the person that wants to just, maybe burr something. But it's a good deal for us because we know that we're going to do the work ourselves and we're going to keep it for another 20 years and we're going to collect rent for the next 20 years out of that property. And that's how we've built our portfolio. So I tell my students all the time, you either need to be the first one to grab a deal before somebody else does, or be the last one. Wait until nobody wants that deal, and then you take it, if you have the skill set to do that. Does that make sense? And
Yes,
we had the skill set to do it. So that's why we wait till nobody wants that deal. The last deal that we bought, and you guys are going to appreciate this, the last deal that we bought on a credit card. We paid $26,000 for a 2-story brick house on the Ohio River. Now we're going to do all the rehab ourselves. It needs electrical, it needs plumbing. It does have a new roof, but it had that when we bought it, but it does need electrical and plumbing. And then we have to go in after we get the electric and plumbing put in the house. We have to go in and drywall the whole inside. And then we have to bring in all the finishes, all the trim, all the cabinets, all the floor coverings, new windows. We have to put in new windows. We're doing all of that ourselves for pennies on the dollar because we can do it. For example, when you think about what it costs to put a window in, you're going to spend in Central Ohio, you're going to spend $250 to $350 or more to put in just a standard window, to pay a window company to come and set that window for you. We bought the window from Lowe's for $147. And every time we drive down to the house, we take another couple of windows with us and Mark sets them in. And so we're putting windows in for $147 each.
So was that bank owned? Was the bank owned property?
Nope, it was on the MLS. It was just sitting there and nobody wanted it. It was just sitting there on the MLS.
Wow.
And we found it, and it's two-story brick built in 1892. And we're going to turn it, once we get it finished, it's going to be on VRBO. It'll be a short-term rental on VRBO.
So after you have done all the repairs, I mean, how much could you sell that for?
Again, I'd have to do the market down there, but because we are buy and hold investors, I really didn't care.
Okay.
Because we're buy and hold, and our whole point is it's going to be part of our portfolio of our short-term rentals.
So you'll have a positive cash flow, I mean, once you have a renter in place.
Oh, it's going to be short term. So it's
A short term.
I've already looked on Air DNA. There's an app called Air DNA, and you can put an address in, and it tells you if this property were totally fixed, and if you had it out on the market, and if you're short term renting it, this is what Air DNA speculates you could make in a month. And it says that we should be able to bring in about four grand a month on that house once it's done.
Awesome. Awesome. Wow.
So again, that's just my philosophy, because we can do the work. And then my son-in-law, because we're getting older, of course, and don't want to do all that, my son-in-law started his own handyman maintenance company. And so now he is doing a lot of the things that we did early on. And of course, I pay him, being my son. I told him, I said, no, this is your income. Bill me like you bill anyone else. And he does. But because I also have him in my back pocket, we can still buy some of these properties that need total rehab like that need all the wiring done and all the plumbing done and all the drywall done. And my son-in-law is kind of a jack of all trades, just like Mark. And so no matter what I send him out to do, he says, well, if I haven't done it before, I'll figure it out. And he has enough of a skill set that he knows his way around a hammer, so he can figure it out. Like I had a whole handicap ramp on a commercial building that was starting to get rotten. It had been there for 20 some years, and it just needed a lot of repair. And he finally said, do you care if I take the whole thing off, throw it away, and start over? And I said, that's going to be easier. So yes. So he actually, and it had to be to ADA standards. I mean, there was a lot of red tape. And he said, this will be a good experience for me to figure that out so that I can do it for other folks as well. So I'm kind of his guinea pig a lot. So I said, sure, go for it. So he did, and it's beautiful, and it's done, and the city approved it. And so we're good to go. And so again, I have that in my back pocket. So unless you have something like that, that may not be a good strategy for you.
Yes, I think you're at an advantage there, Kathy, because the challenge here, is finding reliable handymen or contractors, right? Not only
Exactly. Well,
reliable, but
that's the
honest.
challenge everywhere.
Yeah, yes, yeah. So, which is why for the most part, most of the properties I normally look at are not like a rehab, it's more cosmetic, right? And I guess you
Okay.
won't be able to make a big profit or, on properties like those that just need cosmetic only, right? But again, the challenge is finding a reliable, honest handyman to do the work. So that's something I'm working on this year. Hopefully I'll be able to find a crew, but that's something I'm currently working on. Now, do you have
And that
any tips? Do you have any tips on where to look? I mean, I know, like you said, it's a challenge pretty much everywhere. But if you didn't have your husband and your son-in-law, I mean, how would you go about that?
I am involved very heavily in all of the networking events in real estate in the Central Ohio area, to the point where I kind of weasel my way in to even get into the leadership team of a lot of those networking groups. And so what that does is that really makes me privy to all of the folks that are joining those groups. And so that gives me a lot of inside information. So the real estate networking groups are really good, whatever is in your area that you can plug into. And if all else fails, go to your local Lowe's store at 7 a.m. and all the contractors will be there loading up. Those are the guys that are working.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I didn't think about
And
that.
I've done that. I've seen a guy loading up, paint. And I said, oh, are you a painter? And he's like, I am. And I'm like, well, I need some painting done. And he's like, here's my card.
That's an idea. Okay. That is noted.
So Anyway, so there's ways around that, but you can. Now, just finding somebody off of Facebook or whatever in a Facebook group, unless you can get some recommendations and referrals of folks that have used them, be careful, because there are a ton of scammers out there. So be careful that you don't give somebody your cash and then they don't show up on your job site.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that
Yes,
tip,
you're very
Kathy.
welcome. Shauna, you had your hand up. Would you like to unmute?
It was by mistake. I'm so sorry.
Oh, okay. Did you have a question?
No.
Okay. All right. We're going to go back to Samuel. And what if you have multiple buyers that want that one deal, since you don't go into a multi-offer type situation? How do you handle that?
Definitely. So just like you hit the nail on the head, the whole idea is to prevent that bidding war. So if we actually have multiple people that are walking a property at the same time, we try to be as fair as possible with it. And honestly, the fairest way to do it is really just by chance. So if we have two people that both want it at the same time, we will actually make them fight to the death. No, I'm just kidding. We'll flip a coin just to see who gets that house. The coin part was serious, by the way. And if it's three or more people, we'll actually have a deck of cards. Everybody pulls a card and the high card wins. So
Okay.
we've had a few instances where, in fact, there was one, I believe a month or two ago, where it was a showing we had for a property and it drummed up quite a bit of interest. It was a great deal. And we actually had 8 different people that wanted that property. So they all drew a card. And that's a little bit rare. We don't usually get that many people in on it, but it was very fun and it was intense. And even the people that weren't in on it were sticking around for the card draw just because they wanted to see what happened.
I love that. I love that. Now that just goes to tell everybody that is listening, if you find a deal, you either have to be the first one through the door, or like my story before, wait and be the very last one, because nobody wants that deal. And then chances are the price is going to come down because nobody wants it. And again, you got to have that team in your back pocket if you're going to wait till the end. But if you're ready to go, you got to be the first one through the door, so that you're not just drawing a card to see if you're going to get that deal. And you got to look at a lot of property to know it's a good deal. And Samuel, I'm sure you look at enough that when you see some, you're thinking, oh my gosh, this one is tons of room in the numbers and all my investors are going to want this one. You know, when you're sitting on a good one, because
Yep,
you're
it's a
looking at
screamer.
enough deals. Yeah, you know. How does the contract and the down payment work with you guys?
Sure. So, I mean, we're using a standard Columbus purchase contract with just some slight modifications here and there, just because it's not a conventional deal that you would get. And as far as the down payment goes, it's usually just a $10,000 deposit, regardless of what the actual purchase price is, that goes towards the purchase price of the property. So in most cases,
Nice.
we're closing, within 2 weeks of contracting for it. So we're always using the same title company since we have a great relationship with them, and it's usually pretty quick and easy from there.
Okay. So again, what I got out of that is if I can save up $10,000 and keep it in my investment fund, liquid, ready to go, I can get one of his deals in contract and be the first one through the door.
Absolutely.
No matter what the numbers are on the deal, 10,000 makes it mine.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially like I mentioned with our hard money lender 212, if someone has at least $10,000 and they're pre-qualified to use that as a hard money lender, you're good to go.
Okay. All right. I love it. I'm going to put in the description. You can reach me at just kathybenner.com. Samuel put his email in there. I will put his lender in there. I'll put all of that in the description. Janice, you had another question?
Okay, so if you wanted to get started and assist effective strategy, so if you want to get started in real estate,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Wilton was asking the question. Wilton, what was your question?
so let's say you want to get started in real estate and you managed to save up 150K. Could you use that money to buy 2 $500,000 houses as a down payment with a loan?
Well, again, I don't know that Samuel, I don't know that you deal in that level of housing. Do you deal in like $500,000 houses that are in the $500,000 ARV range? Do you deal in that range?
Every once in a while, I mean, that's definitely going to be market specific. Typically, if you're dealing with a house in that range in Columbus, it's going to be in a super duper nice area. So there could be, maybe some different conditions of a house that's a little bit, more expensive. I know in some of our markets, like in, San Diego, for example, where you're dealing with $1 million houses, it's going to be a different down payment than it is out here in Columbus. So it just sort of depends on the market in the area.
Yeah. So Wilton, where are you coming to us from, Wilton? What area are you wanting to invest in?
Not Ohio. Well, I am thinking about investing in maybe international, UAE, maybe, probably wouldn't invest there because their laws are not Islamic, but maybe Texas or Florida, somewhere around there.
Yeah, you would have to investigate the lenders in that area. If it were me, I would probably get in touch with some lenders and just get pre-approved. And then that way you know exactly what you have to spend.
But plus,
Kind of
I have
reverse
to
engineer
get a
that.
degree and get out and save up some money before I can even get into this.
Yeah, and again, unless you want to start with something more simple, when I decided to invest in Florida, I bought a $52,000 condo. I didn't buy a $500,000 single family. I bought a $52,000 condo that the HOA allows me to use as a rental, which was my exit strategy. And so now I can either live in it, I can use it, I can short-term rent it, I can mid-term rent it, or if all else fails, I can just put a renter in there.
Wealthy.
I'm sorry.
You kind of had a lot of financial success, it looks like.
Nope, I got into that one with no money down and just found a lender down there that was willing to do a loan on a $52,000. It was very, very low outlay in my part. My entire monthly payment, I think, is $131.
Was it a studio or a condo? A
It's a
studio or
condo.
one bedroom?
It's a one bedroom condo.
One bedroom condo. Okay, got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, one bedroom condo. And that was how I got my foot in the door in Florida. I started with something really small that I could handle.
That had to be years ago at 52,000.
3 years ago.
Oh, just 3 years ago. Where in Florida was that?
Bradenton,
Bradenton.
right
You
below
said,
Tampa Bay.
wow. Oh, interesting. Well, I do have a question for Samuel.
Okay.
Sam, you had said
Are you done
earlier.
with the presentation?
I'm sorry, Wilton. I'm going to put you on mute for just a second. Janice had a question. We'll come back to you. Janice, go ahead.
Yes, Samuel, you had said earlier that you have an agent in-house that does the listing for this property at 1%. Is that full service? What is included with that 1%?
Yeah, full service, everything you would typically get from a listing agent, from marketing to showing the house to people that could potentially be interested. It's just like a regular listing that any other realtor could give someone. It's just that we're willing to do it at a 1% commission rate as a complimentary service to anybody that buys a house from us for that particular house.
Oh, interesting. Okay. But of course, I mean, when the offer comes in, the buyer's agent may ask for the investor to pay X amount, right? And that's something you negotiate.
Sure, potentially. I mean, on the buy side, of course, there could be additional, commission that it's involved. We just want to make sure we're protecting the margins of our investors on the sell side.
Okay. Now, do they pay the MLS fee separate, or that is including the 1%? Because the MLS usually have a fee that is required to be paid. Is that the same in your state where you are, or with your MLS?
Yeah, of course, that can be market specific, but yeah, those sort of details are just sort of dependent on, where you are and everything.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Janice, thank you very much. Wilton, did you have a final question?
It's this meeting, I think it's kind of close to 1 o'clock. I do have some stuff that I have to finish. So I think I'm gonna leave off of here. It seems like the presentation is done with.
Well, thank you for being with us. We appreciate you being here. So I want to thank everyone again for being on board with us today. I hope that we've answered all of your questions. Again, you can reach me at kathybenner.com. There is a button there in my website that you can schedule a strategy call with me if you'd like. If you scroll clear to the bottom footer, there is a contact form. If you just want to leave me a message or have a question and you want me to email you, you can reach me by email that way. I will put Samuel's email in the description and also his lender. And Samuel, thank you so much for being with us today. I appreciate you so much. This is very interesting to me. I definitely need to make sure that all of my students know about you here in Central Ohio, because that is their biggest thing, is trying to find the deal. And you're doing all the hard work. So yes, thank you so much. And thank you for what you're doing. I appreciate the service that you bring to the table. So with that, we are going to say goodbye, and we will see everyone next time. So thank you so much for being with us. And I was looking here to see if I could just stop the recording, and I don't seem, oh, here it is. So I'm going to stop the recording. And if you have any additional comments or questions, feel free to stay on after. And thank you so much again for being with us today.